Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast with your hosts Bill Algie, Dennis Talbot, and Alan Tate. We are three guys who have one thing in common, a love of rock and roll. Our goal is to talk about all things rock. We hope you find this show intriguing, funny, and occasionally highly opinionated. Enjoy! Welcome to the Ages of Rock podcast. This is episode number 110. This week we're going to interview Big John Harte, former bodyguard for Kiss, Iron Maiden, Prince, Billy Idol, and others. Before we get to that, though, we've got some, we have a letter from a new listener, new viewer, and Alan has a little bit of a rant. What you got, Dennis?
A rant? I can't believe somebody has a rant on this.
It's not really a rant. It's more humor than anything.
I can't believe Alan has a rant. You're the ranter.
That's what I'm saying.
Dennis is the ranter.
Bill likes to rant too.
I ranted once or twice.
Anyway, we got an email from Sheldon Markland, and I'm going to read it here real quick. It says, "Hey guys," he says, "I know I'm always late to the party with this, but just wanted to say I really enjoyed meeting and hanging out with all three of you at the Atlanta Expo. Not sure if you remember me, but I was the Canadian dude with the Toronto Maple Leaf hat sitting beside your camera while we were waiting for Vinny to come out. You were a blast to hang out with and kept me entertained while waiting." He says, as promised, I checked out your podcast and really liking it and making a point of checking it out each week. Make sure to pass this on. This was sent to Alan. It says, pass it on to Bill and Dennis. Keep on rocking. Cheers from your Canadian buddy and new fan, Sheldon. Well, Sheldon, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And we do remember you. So we all had a great time at the expo, and there was a lot of downtime. So we did sit there and was cracking jokes and having a good time. So thanks. We appreciate it.
Keep listening. Go. Yes. Tell all your friends while you're at it.
Exactly.
And their friends. Tell those friends to tell their friends.
Exactly.
We need more friends.
So, Alan, what is this rant, dude? Let's hear it.
What's up with that?
2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago by now, I went to see Dead, D-E-D, New Year's Day, P-O-D, and In This Moment at the Victory Theater here in Evansville. 900 million people. Of course, it's like a 1,500 seat theater, so 1,500 people have their phones up like this, videotaping, watching the show, whatever they were doing. Security guys never said anything. I have this little device. I have a little external microphone hooked to my iPhone. It's attached to an iPhone. Security guy comes up to me. "You can't be recording this show." "Hey, fella, you see the other 900 people in here with that? What difference?" And of course, I know you're not supposed to record these shows. I record the shows because sometimes I like to listen to them again and again if it was a good show. But I guess my rant is, why you single me out when all these other guys are recording?
And they're getting video,
the guy's a douche.
Well, the funniest part about it was the guy that caught me made eye contact with me, and I knew he had caught me. And I don't care that he caught me. What the worst was going to happen is I was going to get kicked out. But he walked right past me, looked at me the whole time, and then turned and went and found the biggest security guy he could. This dude was...
he feared you, man.
Maybe you were a threat. He's
I don't know how I could be a threat because I was smaller than him. Maybe he just respects his elders. Because it was a young guy.
You little guys are scrappy, though. I mean, they're scared shitless of that.
I guess.
They punch you in the balls and shit. You're like...
Yeah. Well, I guess my biggest rant is if you catch me recording or at the show you're working, sack up and tell me yourself. Don't go get your buddy. And while you're at it, I want to see you bitch at some of these other people for recording, not just the one guy, because this is far from a professional recording.
And that was singling you out because and then like I said, there was 18 people, in your 3-foot area you were at, videotaping this whole fucking thing.
When Kiss did their farewell tour here in Evansville, the same thing happened. 9,000 people there with their cameras. And I'm the one that they single out and take my camera away from me. I had to go to the business office to get my camera back at the end of the show. I missed half the show back there arguing with the guy.
Maybe they have like a poster and they give it to everybody and said, "Look for this."
It's
look
like
for
a
this.
wanted thing. It's just,
look for this
this
guy.
Dumb dick right here. You see him? Whatever he's got in his hand, take it. But what was funny? What was funny though is I recorded the first 2 bands successfully. And the guy caught me with the recorder right before POD started.
I wonder if it was a POD thing.
He just said in general, but he didn't tell anybody else that had their recorder there to put it away. You know.
Yeah. What an ass.
And my guess would be was because it was the external microphone.
So how was POD?
POD was very good.
Yeah, I've seen them a couple times. They're really good.
But what I was getting at was the security guy says, you can't record that here. Personally, I don't care, but they don't want it. So I'm like, okay. You know, I stuck it in my pocket. And then after POD got done, I went into the bathroom and took it out of my pocket, stuck it in my shirt pocket, and came back out there and recorded
But did you grab onto your rocket? That's what I want.
Yeah.
I'll do that anyway.
As long as they're good.
Yeah.
So I ended up recording.
It's kind of like a mini rocket, though. It's like a little firecracker.
It's a little firecracker.
M80. Blow up all over you.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well,
that's kind of interesting.
You know.
Okay.
Fuck off, security guy. Just fuck off.
Okay. So while we're ranting, I got a little rant. There we go. I said I didn't have a rant, but I do. So today I hear that Metallica tickets go on sale very soon. All right. So they're coming to Indianapolis. Okay. On March 19th, I believe, 2019.
Really?
And the tickets go on sale, like, I think this upcoming weekend or with very shortly. Okay. So let's understand this. It's going to sell out the day the tickets go on sale, and they are going to get that money and that interest off those millions of dollars for a year ahead of when the show ever comes to Indianapolis.
And what if the show gets canceled? And what if somebody dies?
Bullshit.
You know,
that's crazy. Justin Timberlake. I try to get at least tickets for Justin Timberlake. Right. I have had pre-sale tickets, pre-sale pass, $90 to sit in the 15th row or above in Conseco Fieldhouse. $90.
You don't want to sit up there anyway.
No, you don't. I mean, sorry. Okay, my ranting is just about ticket prices and the fact you're getting raped and people are stealing your money, and it's just bullshit. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. This pre-sale shit didn't help you any. Like with the food shit.
It didn't.
Did it help us? Fuck that shit. No. I go to the Second Market, get it from StubHub. Get Ream hard, but I pick.
Hey, but we got a great guest on tonight, right?
Yes, we do. And speaking of that great guest, here we go. Hey, folks, we've got Big John Harte here. How's it going, Big John?
Doing great. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
Doing fine.
It's rainy here. Don't you live in Florida?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
It's cold and wet up here right now in southern Indiana. You know, it's not. I'm sure you've been through Indiana a few times with some bands.
Yeah, it's still snowing this time of year, ain't it? Or nearly?
Yeah, it can be.
Well, yesterday the temperature got almost up to 80, and today it barely hit the 40s.
Down here in sunny. Ain't too much.
It's a horrible life.
But we only get 2 seasons, brown and green.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's not a bad gig, though.
No, I'll tell you that much. I did that for 30 years.
There you go.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm originally from New Jersey. So we didn't get as much as maybe you guys, but we got our fair share.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Bill, you want to go start off with?
Yeah, I got to. So, John, I watched the. We were at the. We met at the Atlanta Expo, which was great to meet you guys there. You guys were very nice, and it's cool. Those things are nice because I've not met any of those yet that have just been jerks or difficult to work with or talk to or stuff like that, which has been pretty cool. So it was nice to meet you guys. I was watching back the YouTube video that we recorded, and I noticed that, you said you started with Kiss in 1975. Can you talk about how that connection happened? How did you get hooked up with them?
Well, it's through somebody I knew before that I had worked with, a fellow by the name of Rick Stewart. He hired me in '72 at a place called Roosevelt Stadium, which was an outdoor venue in Jersey City, New Jersey. And from there, I went to the Capitol Theater, which is also a place he worked, and that was in my hometown. That made it real easy. And we developed a friendship there. And then at some point, he went out and started working for bands on and off, and then he wound up going out with Kiss. He got the call from McCoy Management. He knew one of the fellows in Stars, Richie Rano, and Richie Rano told him there may be an opening to come in and do an interview. So he went, and there was not open for Stars, but he did have an opening for Kiss. So he took that, and he was there for a while, and then they decided they wanted another security fella. So he called me and asked me if I was interested. I said, yeah, I was. And he said, well, probably just going to be Europe. I said, okay, that's fine. And he said, but that's not until '76. I said, it's okay, I'll do it. And they called me right at the end of 75 and put me to work. So I did mostly '76, and then we went to Europe, and then I was there ever since.
So you're a big dude back then. I was showing my wife some pictures of you back in '75, and some of the pictures of you shielding Paul and Ace's face and stuff like that. And compared to today. But were you a football player in high school, and were you in because you were a big dude, man.
Yeah, I played football in high school, and I was in the field, shot putter.
That explains it.
Exactly. So
and drugs and drinking, and look where I wound up.
Exactly. So that first tour, then you said you went to Europe, then right off the bat first.
Well, no, they were still doing the States, so
gotcha.
I wound up going through, from that January of '76 for sure, all the way through until they went to Europe. And then when we went to Europe, I thought I was going to be done after that, but they changed their minds, and I was there until 1983.
Gotcha. We're not trying to talk over you. That's why we keep muting our mics. We don't want to, because every time we talk, sometimes it blocks your call. So that's why we got a little space in between there. But so anyway, Bill, you said you had something. Hold on.
Yeah. So of those tours, were there one of those tours that was more fun for you? I mean, well, I guess the question I have, because I've never talked to anybody that's really toured like that before, are those tours fun?
It depends on your mental outlook. It can be fun, or they can be a drudgery. I've worked with people who they just didn't like the fact, well, especially back then, we were doing 6 shows a night, 6 shows a week, 7 if we could get them. And, some guys just couldn't keep up with that schedule, especially, the road crew guys. And because it's a lot of work, especially back then, they weren't the real big headliners. Everything was a little bit different rock and roll production-wise. There was a lot more hands-on stuff for all the technicians. So there was guys who absolutely hated it. The only reason they did it was for the money. But at the end of the tour, you could see where they had met their breaking point, and you couldn't wait to go home. Myself, personally, I enjoyed it because I like travel. I don't mind living out of a suitcase. I had never been to Europe, so I got to go to Europe the first time. And then I went 7 times since that point. But the tours themselves, even for me and, management type people, there's a lot of work involved. It's a lot of stress. It's a lot of long hours, more so for the traveling entourage with the band and the band themselves. I mean, they work hard, but, you know, when they get to their room, they can go to sleep if they want. Of course, most of them didn't do that anyway. So, you know, I was usually the first one up and the last one to go to bed.
Exactly. You know, that's why I was curious about your typical day. I mean, when they were, you were with them like during like to and from the shows, and you know, anytime they had appearances and stuff like that. But when did you have? I mean, at night, was there a point where you were just there wasn't anybody with them? You know what I'm saying? You didn't have to be there 24/7.
No, we were 24/7.
Oh, okay. And those guys probably kept you up 24/7 too.
It said we were, or I was, the first one up and the last one to go to bed. So sometimes I didn't get to the bed because I was still up from the night before with somebody.
Gotcha. So was there a lot of, I guess, with the problems as far as like whenever hotels and stuff, just trying to keep people from getting to them? I'm sure they tried every possible nook and cranny to get to them.
Yeah, in the beginning, that wasn't so much of a problem because we were in and out so fast. I mean, we'd stay the night of the show, after the show, and then we were out the following morning going on to the next place. So there wasn't a lot of fan frenzy at the very beginning. You know, if they could find us out and you know get to the hotel, hotels did pretty good about having, you know, either their own security type person or a policeman to monitor the lobby and stuff. But every now and then somebody'd sneak up. That's why I didn't go to bed so late.
Exactly. And was you personal for certain individuals, or did you just basically the whole everybody?
When I started, it was two of us, myself and Rick. So we had 4 band members. So you sort of had to flip the coin to see who was doing what, and then we'd figure out who needed the most protection, depending on where they were going. But at that time, they usually went out either in pairs or together, so that made life a little easier. And again, there wasn't that much time for going out. So, you know, it was usually they get back to the hotel, you know, they, you know, want to wine and dine whoever showed up, you know, in the female sense of the word. And then, you know, they'd go to bed and we'd have to, you know, clear the halls, as it were, and then hopefully get ourselves to bed at a reasonable hour so we could get up and start all over again.
Gotcha. Is my voice on? There we go. I keep hitting this mute button and it keeps going off and on. Which was your favorite to have to do security for? Did you have a favorite?
Not really, but it depended on which day of the week and who I wasn't angry with. They all had different.
Sorry.
Angry.
Yeah, I don't think you're a guy. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on you. Yeah, you'd be the kind of guy that you don't want to make angry, especially. You're about twice the size of all of them.
Yeah, they figured that out relatively soon, and you know, I only had words with one, maybe 2 of them, and that ended with them realizing that they shouldn't do that anyway, and we continued.
Exactly. Bill, I'm sorry.
As a favorite, you know, again, it depended on what was going on. If we're going to the clubs, we go with Gene and Paul because they were more into watching, you know, whoever was playing and stuff like that. If we're going out to the bars, well, it's going to be Ace and Peter usually, and you know, they would have a good time. I'll tell you that much. We were a party wherever we were.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things that was the cool mystique about Kiss was, you know, the fact that, you know, people didn't know who they were for years and years and years. Was that really, really difficult to do, or, you know, to keep them hidden sort of, or was it people didn't know who they were and it really wasn't that big of a challenge?
Depending on the city, meaning if you're in New York or LA or Chicago, it wasn't as difficult with fans, but it was much more difficult with paparazzi. if we were in, the smaller towns, like instead of being in Dallas, being in Houston. At that time, Houston wasn't as frequented, or Amarillo, say. You didn't get the same thing there with the paparazzi, but fans were everywhere because we were the only thing in town. So they put two and two together, they'd figure it out, and then, do their best they can to see the band in whatever fashion.
You're muted, Bill.
I'm sure Amarillo had a lot of people with really long hair hanging around down there.
Not so much.
Was there a specific city that really gave you a big challenge from a security perspective?
Not really. Not one specific. Each city, depending on the venue, has its own set of problems. And well, in the bigger cities, you have as time went by, we were staying in much better hotels. And of course, they're worried about their hotels, so they'll have to give us, plenty of security people. But if you're staying at the Holiday Inn, you're pretty much on your own.
So when Gene wrote, was it Calling Dr. Love or Christine 16 that's on the Evansville, Indiana Holiday Inn letterhead, there wasn't a bunch of security hanging around, huh?
No.
He probably gathered up a bunch of that stationery.
Yeah, he probably did. Yeah,
probably wrote a bunch of songs on there.
Probably.
Depending on the time of night, we would go to like a Denny's or some kind of diner and stuff like that, and we were usually left alone. It was interesting going to the truck stops with them. It definitely caused a stir. But the overall situation was, they were pretty savvy about keeping their faces hidden themselves. If you look at some of the pictures that when it started leaking out there, when I left them, you'd see Gene with a card over his face, covering his nose and his mouth, just his eyes could be seen. Paul was aware of that. Ace would use his jacket. So, I mean, they understood the value of that, keeping the mystique going. And, whatever, when I said there was only two of us, we only got four hands. If they're not walking together, we ain't covering everybody. So they understood that as well and had to pitch in and help themselves.
So, moving on, you said you talked about after you left KISS. Once you left KISS, who are some of the other bands that you worked with, and do you have any good stories to tell about them?
I went to work for Iron Maiden, did a couple of years with them, did Billy Idol, did a brief stint with Prince, and then in '87 I come back to KISS.
So, you go from Iron Maiden to Billy Idol to Prince.
Correct.
Can you talk about the contrast in the lifestyles or the different types of music, the different types of fans, anything like that?
Well, the Iron Maiden fans are very similar to KISS. They're manic. They're, everything that the band does, they want to know about. Billy Idol, not so much. They're more of a regular tempo fan. Prince people, they're well into Prince. Some of them would, try to seek him out, hang out at the hotels if they found out where he was, but not so much for Billy.
That's interesting.
That is interesting. Did you were those guys all pretty likable? I mean, did you work with them individually? The main, those guys individually, or were you part of an overall general security detail?
Which guys are we speaking of?
Well, Billy Idol. Which guy? I mean, the main guys in Iron Maiden and Prince. Did you have those? The main. Did you have Bruce Dickinson and those guys, or was it, just general detail?
With Iron Maiden, I was the only security guy they had.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But see, they were a different mindset than Kiss. First of all, you didn't have to worry about their faces and their personalities from the way they were and came up. They would go and hang out with the fans. They'd go to the bar across the street, you know. So there was never a big challenge there as a rule. And most people were respectful of them. They were hanging out with them. They talked to them. They buy them drinks. So, you know, they had a great time. And the band was very giving in that respect. Billy I worked with on a personal note and did an album with him. You know, while I worked with him while I was doing an album, not on tour. So it was a little different of a scenario there.
Gotcha.
Prince, I didn't work for him directly. I was hired to do venue security because it was a big deal in '87. Yeah. And they needed somebody just to take care of that. He had a whole bunch of security people around him. I mean, he was like president, but he had 9 or 10 security guards that were hired just for him. One of them being his brother, and they had 3 or 4 people for Sheila E. And that was it. The rest of the band, they were pretty much on their own.
That's funny.
Well, you really only want to get to Prince anyway. I mean, even the girls were.
A lot of things have been said about Prince, but he's not that bad of a fellow, and unfortunately he's passed now. But he was very talented, way into his music, and very capable of changing genres, at the drop of a hat. As far as what he was like on a personal note, I got along with him pretty good, but I'd have to deal with him on a daily basis. I'd dealt with him after the show, because he would come off stage and I'd meet him wherever the stage exit was, and he'd tell me where we were going to do the next after show party.
Well, that dude has got a ton of talent. I mean, it's amazing, and yeah, it's so sad that he passed and how he passed and all that kind of stuff, because he had years and years left, that's for sure, of some great music.
Exactly.
The band wasn't too keen on him, because them after parties would go on for hours. He'd play and play, and of course they were there to play as well. So there was always some grumbling going on about that.
They probably weren't grumbling on Friday when their check got in the bank, though.
You're right.
So when you back with Kiss again, real quick, when you were with them on detail or with them personally, how many times did you have the situation where you had a photographer get a lucky shot in with the camera and then have to talk them out of their film or their camera, or situations like that? Did that happen very often?
Often enough. There were certain areas or certain times where I couldn't move the band out of the way fast enough, and I'd have to go over and say, you're not supposed to do that. I'm going to need to have that film. And, and then the persons would go into a song and dance about, well, I can't give you that because my kids' pictures are on there or some other nonsense. And I said, okay, fair enough, but I'm going to take that film, and it is your camera, and I'll give you back your camera. But if you let me do it, when I give you back your camera, it may not work again as good as it's working right now.
Exactly. Well, the bad thing is, nowadays, the paparazzi now, they would be, threatening to sue you and all this stuff and jumping under your car and trying to get hit, and it's a lot different than it was back then, isn't it? Now.
Absolutely. With on the general sense, I could never have gotten away with stuff we got away with back there, and we never would have been as successful because all of your cell phone's a camera. So there would be no way without, a really strict regimen for the band to cover their face. Otherwise, it would never work. It would require a lot of cloak and dagger, a lot of smoke and mirrors. You would have to really plan out all your moves. There would be no spontaneity. It wouldn't be like, hey, so-and-so is playing at this club. Let's go check it out. That ain't going to happen. It's almost impossible.
Exactly. You know
that's pretty interesting because we get taken. We think about what things are like now. It never dawned on me till you just said that they couldn't do that today. I think the band Ghost has tried to do that. I don't know if they've had pictures and stuff like that, but I know that that's a band that they're really trying to keep that masked thing going. But you couldn't do that today. That's interesting to think about.
My thoughts on that are back then when I started working with Kiss, that whole late 60s, early 70s, right in through the 70s to the 80s, there wasn't a lot of distractions for young people. We didn't have computers, we didn't have video games. I mean, Pac-Man was in the bar, but originally it was music. That was everybody talked about. It was on everybody's lips. Every week you'd get together with friends and you'd talk about who's coming to town, what clubs they're going to be at. Because a lot of it was small venues, not real big back then. So you would, you go to New York and you see somebody at the Village Vanguard or the Village Gate rather, or what was the name of that place? Damn, I can't think of it. About 1,000 seats. The bottom line. Bottom line. And, you would want to go see them. And usually if they made the bottom line, that means their next step was they're going to be big stars. But all the shows are much more intimate and talked about forever.
You're off again. Your mic's off again.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know.
Well, I thought you were trying to talk, and all of a sudden we were just. It's funny if you're watching it on video, guys, because it's you see a guy's mouth move, and it's like nothing's happening.
You just have to be careful because otherwise, John, we cut off half of what he says. So we're trying to be respectful of that for sure.
Exactly.
Yep.
He's just kicking back with a few light ales. That's why.
That's exactly right. So, John, did you, speaking of clubs and stuff like that, did you go to, Studio 54 and things like that with those guys?
Yes. And I would have to, the way that would work is I would know who's coming, and I would be there about an hour before. I knew the owners and I knew their door people, and I would convey to them what was going on. So that when the band showed up, I hustled them right in the door. There was no rope. Everything was inside, almost immediately. So we never really had a problem there. The guys back then, speaking of paparazzi, they knew the band was there. They'd come up and ask me questions about it. And, we respected what they were doing. So we would try to give them something so they had something to sell and keep what we needed to keep covered. And we were successful with that for the most part. If you look at all the photos that come out during the time that I worked for them, you're not going to see maybe one or two that actually sniped us and got away with it.
Gotcha. Hey, one question about Studio 54. When they did get into the place, and they finally got in through and was inside. Did they spend the evening covered? Did they cover their face halfway up, or did they, when they get into a place like that, that was more, what I mean?
It would depend on the situation. I know I'm being vague, but I'm not trying to be. It's what they felt comfortable with, who they were with, and their surroundings. They were all smart enough to keep their eyes open. Even Ace, as hammered as he could get, he was very aware of who was around him. So, depending on what I would see, I might, like if they split into little groups and were socializing with various people, I would go to who I thought would probably need the most help because they are more vulnerable, not for any other reason. Gene was pretty good about tucking himself away, back out of the limelight, as it were. Paul, he'd walk around a little bit, make sure he got noticed. That was his thing. And then, if he found people that he knew and socialized with, he would also sort of gravitate to a lesser public area.
So they were probably, like I said, while they were there, they weren't in the general public. I'm sure there was VIP areas, well, so they could be more comfortable, like you said, being around people that they probably knew or was already friends with, is what you're saying?
Well, no, I mean, most of 54 was the VIP room. Yeah, they had some upstairs areas, but, back in that date, that was for everybody to go up there and do a few lines or whatever. The club itself, most people went there to cut loose. And most of those people were famous in their own rights. You had the Andy Warhols, the artist people, big business people. So nobody wanted to be fucked with, as it were. So, everybody sort of kept to themselves. The paparazzi didn't get inside. They got to the front door. And that's pretty much it.
Gotcha.
People inside with personal cameras, but even the band understood that, and they would be on the lookout for it. Gene, right. He was really good, boy. He'd sitting there talking to somebody, and out of the corner of his eye, he'd get somebody with a camera. He'd immediately have his face covered and continue his conversation.
That's cool.
So, did you have a time where those guys got into trouble and you had to get them out of there? And did you ever get in any scuffles? Oh,
lots of scuffles. We didn't leave. We made them leave. What are you kidding?
I'm Big John Harte. Get your ass out of here.
I had an incident happen in I think it was San Francisco, and somebody was screwing around with us, and we were at a club, and said something to Peter's wife at the time, who was Lydia. And I seen Rosie get up, which was Peter's bodyguard at the time, and I seen the look on his face, so I knew something was up. And I started heading that way. Rosie got this guy by the collar. He hands him off to me. I take him to the back door, what I thought was the back door, dumped that into an alleyway, and I took this fella and unceremoniously stuck him in the garbage can. So that was the But I come in, and the club manager is standing there going, "Hey, you're supposed to let my guys do that." I said, "Well, your guys weren't available. Go talk to him and get him straightened out, because I'll do it again if I have to."
That's awesome.
Buddy.
So, John, you have a book you're working on, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about it.
It's about my getting into the business and the experiences that I had with the bands that I work for. It's not about Kiss per se or Iron Maiden. There'll be, stories in there about that. But, a lot of times, recently I've done a few of the Kiss expos. And most people ask me, what was it like to be on the road with the band? And they have a preconceived notion that, since I was not a roadie person or a technician, that I just hung out with the band and, we got high all day. And that's definitely not the case. So I would like to enlighten them as to what our duties were, my daily routines, what was all encompassing in my job. And that's the object of the book. And, with each band, everything is a little different. There was different responsibilities, different things that, maybe Iron Maiden did that Kiss didn't do or didn't want that Kiss wanted. It's all adjusting to those type of things. It wasn't there was no blueprint or a playbook to do all this stuff.
And you're self-publishing this book, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I am. Go to Pledge Music.
So, go ahead.
I said, go to pledgemusic.com, Big John Harte.
Okay. When you do the Pledge Music thing, there are different levels. You get different perks for different amounts that you pledge to get the book or whatever. Would you like to talk about the different levels and things like that? Or do you have that hashed out yet?
One second.
You know, guys, hey, it's Steve. There's a bunch of obviously there's a bunch of different prize levels, you know, for donating and the crowdfunding portion for financing the book. So there's so many of them. You know, John can certainly talk to you about some of them, but you know, we really encourage the listeners to go there and see the different packages and see what they're interested in. We tried to put stuff out there at all different price ranges for people to afford. And there's some really good packages there, aside from actually just pre-purchasing the book.
Well, folks, you heard it from Steve.
Yeah, he's much more eloquent than I am regarding that stuff.
Well, that's okay, because Bill speaks more eloquently than either Dennis or I, so.
I don't know about that.
I can get a sentence out sometimes. So you said that's on pledgemusic.com under Big John Harte.
I've got all of the stuff.
Oh,
right
he's got
here.
it. Okay.
When we're done talking, I'll throw out all of these links.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Do you have anything else you want to say about your book, John?
Well, I think people, if they're into the bands, they'll find it interesting because there's going to be little vignettes in there about, you know, working with each band. So they're going to learn possibly something they didn't know about them, what it was like to be at the studio when they were recording or on the road when we were writing. You know, you mentioned, Gene, with the Christine 16 situation. You know, a lot of that stuff wound up, there was tracks put down on the road before we even got back home.
Right, that's pretty cool.
So, can I ask a question about that real quick? So, you know, with Gene Simmons doing the vault thing, have you seen any of those songs that are on there? Or have you heard any of them? And do they ring a bell that you might have heard on the road?
Unfortunately, I have not heard any of that stuff, so I'm not familiar. I couldn't comment. But if I get a chance, I'll take a look and see. But then I'll have to see what it sounds like for it to be familiar. But they did a lot of writing on the road, and they would go to 4 tracks or 8 tracks, whatever could be available when we had a day off, and lay down tracks. So by the time we got back to New York area, which is where everybody was living then, we'd go in the studio and knock the album out, you know, in a month's time, which back then was unheard of because everybody was taking 3, 4, 6, 8 months.
Wow. Okay, I got one more question, and I'm going to stop asking questions. Is that okay?
Interview's over.
Yeah. Can you talk just a little bit about coming back into KISS for Crazy Nights? How did that happen? And what was the difference between when you left and when you came back?
All right, when I left in '83, it was monetary. They had decided that there was no more retainers. Nobody was guaranteed work. It was as the tours came up, you were available, you got to do the tour, which most bands started doing that. So you had to bid for your jobs, different places. That's how I wound up working for Iron Maiden and Billy Idol and Prince. Then I got a phone call that KISS was looking, so I called them up, and I agreed to do the States. And then after that, they took time off before they went to Europe. And, you know, I was married then. I had a son, and I had responsibilities. I had to keep working, so I couldn't just hang around. The difference between KISS then and KISS in '87, well, obviously it was different people for the most part. There was a different vibe. It wasn't as exciting for me as it was in the beginning because I was spoiled. I was there as things were starting to happen. And you know, as crazy as it was being on the road, it was also an exciting time. You know, by '83, you know, they were going through they went through the personnel changes, personal changes, management changes. So, you know, some of the air was let out of the sails at that time. And, you know, when they did the reunion tour, I think that pumped everything back up again.
Cool.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I was going to say thanks.
Well, but before we get off of here, I want to pimp all things Big John Harte. So visit the Big John Harte website at bigjohnharte.com, and that's Harte. And he has a mailing list, so sign up for that and you won't miss any announcements. To get more information on the book and to find out the different price levels and the perks and all of that stuff, go to pledgemusic.com/Big John Harte. Pledge to make a part of the book happen. Other places you can find John, Facebook.com/Big John Harte, Twitter.com/Big John Harte, and strangely enough, Instagram.com/Big John Harte. You got anything else you want to say, John?
Thank you very much, and I guess you guys are getting rid of me.
Well, if you've got anything else to say, we'll keep talking.
If you want to keep talking, man, let's keep talking.
Yeah.
Keep asking, I'll keep talking.
So are you guys? You say you are going to try to go to Indy? Then where is my screen? Just frozen up.
The first Kiss Expo I was about, I don't know, I guess 7-8 years ago.
Gotcha.
Just
Gotcha.
trying to work out the details of the promoter.
Cool. It's gonna be packed. It looks like it's gonna be a packed event. That's for sure.
Yeah.
What was your? I do have so. What was your opinion of the Vinnie Vincent return? I mean, okay, not opinion. I don't want to put you on the spot, but being there, it felt kind of electric, really.
Well, I think it was well overdue for him. Everybody was curious. It seems like the fans enjoyed the fact that he come out and he spoke candidly about his past 20 years and the problems that he's had throughout. I thought it was really informative of him and like a healing for him to be able to do that and then get a positive response from the fans.
Yeah, it was just very unfortunate. A lot of people took some shots online and made some kind of disparaging remarks, but I think overall being there, and seeing him and, hearing him play, actually play was cool. And hearing, him and Robert Fleischman sing was just, it was really cool. Something I never thought I'd see, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Because he became such a recluse after it all that, who would have thought that what happened in Atlanta would have happened at all?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I was at the show in Evansville, Indiana, right next to Paul and Vinny on that last show of the that tour that was Vinny's last show, and
I was there too. We were all three there.
you could sense the tension. There was a little tension going on there. It was kind of interesting.
I would believe that. Now I was gone by then.
Yeah, it was evident. I mean,
yeah,
at the end of the show when they did an encore and Paul just stand there with his, basically his arms folded, looking at Vinny on the side, just, even through the makeup, you could tell he was pissed. It wasn't, there wasn't a lot of hiding it. So, well, not through the makeup, I guess, because they were off.
Yeah,
they were off by then.
He was throwing daggers.
Yeah, you could see the daggers. You could tell he was not a happy man. And that whole show just seemed a little bit off. It was kind of funny, but I'm glad I got to see him because I didn't get to see him on the Creatures tour. So they didn't come to Evansville, so that didn't work out for me. But yeah, it was good to see him back and see that he was healthy and things are going to get back on track for him. Looks like he's got some events coming up too, so hopefully things will work out.
Yeah, I mean, I wish him well. The riff that he had with the band Kiss, sometimes I sit back and wonder why that they brought him into the fold anyway, because it was almost from the very beginning there that they were clashing about stuff. And of course, I wasn't privy to what all the problems were, but you could sense some of it and see some of it. A lot of it was Vinny, he got hired. He was really happy to be there, but at the same token, he wanted to show that he was truly worthy of the position. But they weren't having it. They wanted somebody to just
in the
come
box.
in, assume the role, and just roll with it for now. And Vinny kept on fucking heads with that. Plus, he hated the makeup and the platforms and stuff. He was never really comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think they wanted a guy in a box, and that's not what Vinny wanted to do. He wanted to do that in the box, but he wanted to be out of the box, and I think that's what caused some problems for them, for sure.
I'm sure that you're on the money there with that.
Yeah. What was the transition like between Peter and Eric?
Well, Peter was out. I came into work one day into the office, and I was told that Peter Criss is no longer my responsibility. I said, okay. And then I found out why, as far as he's no longer in the band. No particulars were given or shared. But I knew that was in the pike anyway, at least a confrontation with management and the other band members. And then when they hired Eric was like the kid who just got to take the prom queen to the prom. He was ecstatic. As his fan, he just couldn't get over the fact that he was where he was then.
It's interesting because every interview I've ever seen with Eric like that, he always seems to be genuinely just happy. I mean, ecstatic about being there and the place that he's in, and he didn't seem to. Any interviews I saw, which there aren't a lot, but he just never seemed to have get that rock star mentality thing where he was better than anybody else or anything like. He just didn't seem to have that persona. It didn't come across.
He didn't have that persona. He was genuinely, like the guy next door. But he loved what he was doing, for sure. He was ecstatic that it was the band that he really liked. But as far as being the rock star, it's just not in his makeup. He wasn't going to go out there and, point fingers and be demanding. That's not him.
All right, I'm going to keep asking questions because you guys got to stop me. So
go ahead, fanboy.
Have you read stuff about this Kiss 2.0 thing and about Gene and Paul and if they leave, will there be will Kiss continue? Have you read much about that, John?
I haven't read much about it. I've been asked about things like that. Well, what would they do if at this point, God forbid, one of them pass away? What would the rest of them do? Or somebody gets injured and can no longer tour or perform. And I think personally that if something was to happen with Gene, I think Paul would let it stay where it is, be done. If it was Gene that was still going and Paul was incapacitated, I think Gene would try to make it work somehow, but you can't replace Paul. I don't care what people think as far as his entertainment skills or his vocals or whatever or anything else. He is a main focal part of that band and has been for years. So to try to replace that, I don't think they'd be successful. The only other thing I could think of that would work, if they wanted to call it quits per se, would be to do like a Jersey Boys or something like that, or Beatlemania, where it'd be a company of people. It could be Eric and Tommy, and if they wanted to stay in with that, and have that work. They could probably do Broadway with it, and other places.
Exactly. It's very funny because that is exactly the same thing I've been saying. Right. You can't do it without Paul because it's Paul. I just don't see. I don't. And maybe I'm just not interested in it. I'm not. But and the same thing with it'd be great if they did something in Vegas and they did a Cirque du Soleil thing or they did some kind of show thing out there where it's a residency and just like you said, the Jersey Boys thing or something like that. But I don't want to see Kiss 2.0. I don't want to see a bunch of other guys dressed up like them doing that stuff. That's not of interest to me. So it's very interesting. We have a very similar take on that that potential issue. So
I don't think, is my own opinion, there's nothing to back it up, I don't think it'd be that successful because without the elements of Paul and Gene, or without Paul, I think it would struggle. And not to slight Gene, but you could dress somebody up as Gene and teach them how to growl and do the blood thing, and they probably pull it off. But Paul's too distinct in his character. There's too much going on with him. He carries the show. He's the spokesperson. Someone to do that would, scripted wouldn't work.
Right. I mean, we've seen Gene. I mean, when Spyro, when he puts on the Gene makeup and stuff, I mean, he's a splitting image. He can sound like Gene, act like Gene. I mean, there was even what was that one advertisement thing they had with him looking at each other? He's almost a mirrored image. So we've seen another Gene. But like you said, Paul, he just has an aura about him. I mean, there's this, it's just weird. I mean, you can probably find somebody that can kind of sing like him, but not quite. But it's just his stage presence, just the way he moves and the way he's a ringmaster. You know what I'm saying? And
greatest frontman ever.
You're not going to find somebody that's got that kind of chemistry. I mean, it's going to be impossible. Yeah,
I agree. And, I mean, you could do it in a residency type situation or a Beatlemania type thing on Broadway, but you can follow that script and it would work because the people going to see it are not objective as far as being entertained. Like it's Kiss, they're reminiscing about the fact that this was Kiss.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a different type of show. I mean, that's going to be something that they're not trying to be Kiss. It's more of a tribute to the Kiss history and the Kiss that. I think that would be a great, and those shows have done really well, the Beatlemania and the, what was the one that you've seen out there? Jersey Boys and stuff. Yeah, they're very, very successful. And I think you'll see something like that at some point. I think you will. I think that's going to be after they do their final tour at some point, which
the end of the road.
The end of the road.
End of the road. We're hearing that here this week. So it's who's to say what's
the topic of the week?
Yeah.
They could, I personally think that they'll keep going as long as they can move. However, back when I started with them, we used to joke about being 50-year-old men in tights. So obviously the joke passed.
Well, Gene sure keeps a lot of that covered up more. He keeps Gene just keeps wearing more and more.
There's no chest or side parts of his
no side parts,
legs or he's got armor everywhere. He looks like a turtle now.
That's fun.
That is fun.
Be kind, fellas. Be kind.
All right, John, we are going to wrap it up here. We try to keep our episodes around an hour, so we do appreciate you coming on. And before you do go, I'm going to just BigJohnHarte.com, pledgemusic.com/BigJohnHarte, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Y'all go order this book. I'm sure it's going to be I can't hardly wait to read this and read some of those stories because the back end of being in the music business is stuff like that is what intrigues me.
Me too.
Backstage, touring with the band, being on the road. We all know that it ain't all sunshine and rainbows.
What? Really? Unicorns
and rainbows.
All right, people, we're out of here.
All right. Well, thank you, John.
You're quite welcome. And one other thing I'd add to that is if they do go to Pledge Music, they'll find a way to get personalized copies as well. So
great.
Cool.
And thank you very much for having me on, fellas.
No problem. Stick around for a minute.
For a second.
All right, folks. Visit us on agesofrock.com. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Facebook. And until next week, peace out. Thanks for listening to the Ages of Rock podcast. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, And most importantly, tell all your friends. Remember, you're never too old to rock. Until the next episode, peace out, folks.